Neon Entertainment Spotlight. So hey, this is Mike here for the latest installation of the Neon Entertainment Neon Spotlight. And we're excited to be joined by Paul Ramsay today. So Paul, let's just get started by saying what's new in your world?
I'm actually at the National Convention for Hypnotists right now, so it's just started today. It's the next 3 days, so it's like all day long sessions for hypnotists who want to broaden their skill set and stuff like that. So it's cool. It's a lot of fun.
Is that Boston area?
Yeah, Boston area. Yeah, Marlboro. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I found your approach to this genre to be really interesting. It's not things that I know a lot about, and I'm sure people who don't study the craft probably are let's say in both. I've seen things, different demonstrations and performances here and there. Some on TV, of course, on YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
I've seen some things at the fair and that kind of stuff. But it seems like your approach is a little bit different. And one of the things that I found to be really interesting is how do you go about getting that accreditation?
So there's probably roughly about a dozen different professional organizations for hypnotists worldwide, and some of them are very specific in their membership. Like I believe there's one that will only allow like dental professionals, like it's for like dental people and that's it, and then there are others that are very broad in their membership. And so I belong to the National Guild of Hypnotists, which is the largest professional organization for hypnotism in the world. They've got over 15,000. In fact, I think they may be up to 20,000 members worldwide now. And so they're a nonprofit, governing body. And when I say governing, they're not legally. They're just trying to create ethical standards for hypnotists and promote the healthy development of the profession. So they have ethical standards for us and standards of usage in our language, and they teach a standard curriculum for people who want to learn to become hypnotists. So they handle all those different things, and along the way, what they do is they have different levels of credentials. And so your first one would be when you first get certified, you just get certified as today is commonly called a consulting hypnotist. And then if you want, you can go for the next credential up, which is a board certified hypnotist, and they have set the criteria for that. You have to take a board certification exam. You have to write a paper and submit it to them on a topic related to hypnotism. You have to be interviewed by a board member, and you have to fill out an application as the start of that whole process. So you do that stuff, and they look at your history, how long have you been in practice, and that's really what the interview's all about. They want to check up on you sort of and make sure you're really committed to your profession. And if you get through all that, they give you the board certification credential. And then there's a couple even that actually are technically even above that. I'm working on the next one right now. So yeah, but they're just, those standards are created by the organizations themselves. They all have their own different standards.
Now, when you say ethics and language, what exactly is involved? I mean, obviously, the ethics, you want to be doing things for either,
yeah. So I think there's two different levels really. So on the one hand, it's the common stuff you would think of, right? Where you think, well, you want to treat people ethically. Just, taking good care of people and being kind and being honest and those kind of ethics as a professional, whether you're on stage or whether you're in an office setting. And I do both. I do consulting hypnotism and stage hypnotism. The other side of it is almost like on a consumer level. So there's a real concern with making sure the broader public understands that hypnotists are not licensed medical professionals. Some licensed medical professionals or psychologists or psychiatrists, they can choose to use hypnotism if they would like. That's different than getting trained as a hypnotist does not make you, a therapist. Being trained as a hypnotist does not make you a psychologist. And so we have to be really careful about making sure that we aren't presenting ourselves in a way where we look like we're practicing therapy without a license, or that we're practicing medicine without a license. Because there is this weird kind of, not weird, it's a nice crossover, really. There's a nice crossover where you can use hypnosis to completely take away people's physical pain. You can use hypnosis to, I've been the hypnotist for medical procedures where it's supervised by medical personnel, and we got permission from the hospital and had the appropriate forms signed and all that. And under their supervision, I used hypnosis to help the patient not have to get anesthesia during the surgery, not have to be knocked out because they didn't like the way that the chemicals, the drugs made them feel. So that's how powerful hypnosis can be, but you have to follow an ethical protocol for how you do that. You can't just run around saying, I'll treat you for this, I'll diagnose you for that. That's not a hypnotist's job. That's either a doctor's job or a psychologist or a psychiatrist's job. Make sense?
Yeah, with all the absolutely. And with all the transparency that we have in today's society, I can imagine that you're probably under the microscope more so than ever with what you're doing, just making sure that what you're doing is on the right side of things.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I'm fine with that. Like, I think that's again, a duty that we have, is to be clear with people about, what they're really getting into, So when people come to my office and they come see me for a session, I hand them a client bill of rights that lays all that out, says, here's what I am, here's what my training is in, let me be clear, I don't do therapy, it's got all that in it, and it's easy when, you're doing a show, like everybody knows they're just coming to be entertained. So you don't really have to worry about that. No one's coming to get, some clinical thing taken care of. They're just coming to laugh and have fun for an hour and a half. And that's the most fun way that you can do it. But with that other stuff, with people dealing with some serious stuff, sometimes you want to make sure that you are transparent and that you're honoring, their time. And yeah.
Absolutely. And, as you just brought up, the entertainment side of things, I noticed that you've taken a different approach with mind games, but I also saw that you have some things in your resume that are what more people would expect from a hypnosis show, I guess, for lack of a better term. So what kind of a balance do you take on? Is mind games more of the predominant approach, or is it a little, 50-50? How is that, balanced?
Well, I think, first and foremost, mind games is an entertainment event. It's an entertainment experience. So I really try to look at how I can come in as an entertainer first and make sure that people enjoy themselves for 90 minutes to 2 hours and really laugh and get to sort of, leave their day behind for a little bit and just laugh and enjoy themselves. But I also think I have a really wonderful opportunity every time that I go and I perform to inspire people to look into hypnotism more. So my perfect day as an entertainer is when I can come into a venue and I can just let people laugh and have a really novel experience, whether they choose to come up on stage and be hypnotized or whether they choose to just watch from the audience. Either way, to just have a really cool experience. And on the perfect day, as they're leaving, there's some kind of an impression that's been made where maybe the next day or the next week or the next month or even a year later, they remember it in a way that makes them think, you know what, maybe I should use hypnosis to help me sleep better at night. Maybe I should use hypnosis to quit smoking or to stop chewing my fingernails or to stop procrastinating on my schoolwork. Or, I just think there's so many great ways for a good hypnotism show to have that extra impact on people. And it's a real blessing for me to be able to go around and do that.
So I'm going to ask you not necessarily, how the clock works. It's more how to tell time. Mind games. How how does that work? I mean, how are you able to approach such a large audience rather than, it seems like it's almost the reversed approach than your typical hypnosis show.
Well, I mean, there is a challenge there, and I think that's part of, it's one of the things I'm really proud about is when I got into hypnotism for the first few years, I did a very traditional stage hypnosis show, and I took advantage of the approach that almost every other hypnotist was using, and therefore I got certain benefits from that, right? Like I got ease of use in some ways, right? Like if you take, the standard is to ask for volunteers, and then let's say you've got a crowd of 200 people, and let's say 50 of them volunteer. You're not going to put 50 people on stage. It's just too many. It becomes cumbersome. So let's say you pick 25, and you let 25 people come up on stage, and then you do your routine, and out of the 25, let's say 12 get hypnotized, and there you go. You've got 12 people, and you do a show with those 12 people. It's a pretty streamlined, easy process for most hypnotists to follow. But I care so much about this other aspect that we were just discussing. I care so much about people having a chance to experience hypnosis so that maybe it makes their life better, that I said to myself after a few years of doing it the traditional way, I said, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to do my show, a show that nobody else does. And one of the first things that I thought of was, why don't I just hypnotize people while they're still sitting in the audience and let every single person who wants to at least try it have the chance to try it. And then I'll develop some way of weeding them out and finding out who the 12 or 15 best people are. And so in my show, they don't volunteer, and literally they don't volunteer at the beginning of the show and come up on stage. They sit right in the audience and they follow the protocol, the hypnotic induction, and they get hypnotized sitting right next to their roommate, their best friend, their boyfriend, whatever it is, their girlfriend. And that gives the audience members a chance to witness it right up close. And it's really a cool, different aspect. But it was all born from me wanting people to see something different and to have a way to have an experience with hypnosis that really opened up their minds to the possibility. And I thought, what better way to do that than instead of having them on stage at a distance, have them sitting right there with each other. So that was the first step. And then the next step was the interactivity, and was just recognizing the culture that we live in today, the role that technology plays, the way in which people want to feel involved and connected through technology. And so giving them a way to say, here's what I'd like to see happen up on stage. And, that started out literally in the first iteration. It wasn't technology. It was quarter sheets of paper and golf pencils. And we were,
right.
we were filling them out before the show. They'd fill them out. I'd turn them in. I'd cycle through them really quick, and then I'd kind of build the show from there. And it was just too clunky. It was just way too clunky. And I thought, this is crazy. This was 2010 at the time. And I thought, this is 2010. We've got all this amazing technology. There's got to be a better way. And looked in, and sure enough, realized, had a conversation with a friend where, I had worked at a university, but I had just shifted from that mindset and forgot that even when I worked at the university before I got into hypnotism, students had these clickers, in the classroom that they used to interact in class. And so we went that way, and we got the clickers and, the live polling software that allows them to see the votes as they're coming in real time, and the graphs moving up and down, and they're oohing and on and cheering when they get their winning vote and booing when they get the losing vote, and it just changes the whole dynamic. It's fun. It's really fun.
How much does your background in education really play into your passion for doing this at schools?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge because, first of all, I just love students. Like I was a sophomore English teacher, straight out of college. And then I went and I worked in student affairs. I worked in residential life, and I ran a dorm for 5 years. and I worked with college students that way. And I love their optimism, and I love their openness to trying new things and having new experiences. And it reminds me to stay open in that way, to look for chances to have new experiences. And I think that's what's so great about a hypnotism show is it's such a good fit. That's what college is about, right? Is trying new things and having new experiences. And what better way to do that than trying something like, hypnosis? So to be able to do that with them has just been, it's the easiest part of the job. It's effortless to work with college students and high school students. It really is. It's great.
I used to live in a neighborhood where it was really mixed. It was a condominium complex, and the older residents, they would look down on the whole college lifestyle. They didn't like the college because there's in that same area. It was right by UB, Buffalo, University of Buffalo.
Yeah.
And they just would have such a narrow mindset for it. But for me, I felt like when school was coming back, it brought this kind of fresh breath of air into the area. You could feel the positive energy from all the students getting excited about coming back. And I could see why that would be, it keeps you fresh, going and doing this stuff, because these young, adults, they're kind of at this point in their life where, they're looking for these kind of things that you're talking about, and they're excited about what they don't know yet. And I can see why that would be pretty infectious.
Yeah. It's such an important part of life, I think, right? It's the gift that they give to those of us who get to come to their communities and work with them, is this reminder that, look, it's really simple. Either you're growing and you're learning and you're evolving, or you're shrinking and you're atrophying and you're basically dying. There's no in between, really. There's no floating middle. You're doing one or the other. And college students are such a high level of that growing, expanding lifestyle, but we all need to have that. It's really cool.
Yeah. Now, with these shows, as you say, you're working with a broader crowd with mind games. But you also mentioned before is that there was a clunky way of approaching it in the past, and you maybe would, get 25 individuals, and maybe 12 of them would be hypnotized. How do you? Can you get into that a little bit? Because that's really interesting to me. How do you decipher who's? Obviously, I'm a newbie here. How do you tell?
No, I get what you mean.
Who's been hypnotized, who hasn't? Have you run into some situations where maybe somebody was faking? That's really curious to me.
Well, so the first thing, this is where it's really crucial that when you're a booker, when you're someone who has booking power at any venue, whether you're at a student council at a high school or an activities board at a college, or you're a corporate committee that would book, either way. This is when you have the chance to book and act. This is why it's so important to look into what people's credentials are and what their level of training is and stuff like that. Because there's, hypnosis isn't dangerous, but if you want a quality product, you need someone who really understands how hypnosis works. And so your question is really speaking to that is, I've been practicing for 13 years now. I started in 2004. And I am a board certified, I've got extensive training, and I just know, I've hypnotized over 15,000 people. When you see people day in and day out, like I have, you get really good at assessing people quickly using just simple observation that other people just aren't aware of. So I can walk on a stage. I can walk down the line of volunteers on a stage, and I can tell by the parasympathetic responses that occur in their body because their brain waves have shifted into hypnosis. Their pupils will dilate. They'll get what's called increased lacrimation. They'll get more tear production. Their eyes will be all watery. They will have the circulation will actually change, and if they're fair-skinned, that means they'll have all these red blotches on their skin, or they'll just be very, very hot-looking. Their skin gets really red, and not everyone gets all of those things, but I know the core things to look for so that I can walk down that line and I can look for the people who are exhibiting them and know that they are the ones who are doing the best. There may be other people who are in light levels of hypnosis, but they're not deep. And I want the people who are deep so I can really get the best results with them during the show. And those physical signs tend to accompany the deeper levels of absorption that people get when, that stuff's happening. So I can walk down and I can assess that really quickly and know that when I make those choices, I'm going to have a great crowd. I'm not going to lose a lot of people. You still can lose some here and there. That's normal, but I'm not going to lose a lot of people. I'm not going to have, fakers. Another great thing about working with people, fakers are almost unheard of. I get asked about it all the time. I get why people ask, but most people in life nowadays, they are not looking to go up on a stage and be the jerk who's causing problems in a live entertainment event, right? So what you actually, they don't, because that, if you go up, unless you're like brilliant and you make it all the way through to the end, there's going to be some point where if you're exposed, you're going to face the derision of everyone else in the room who's like, why are you being the loser? So I don't get that. I really don't. Again, over a decade I've been doing this. What you get are people who really genuinely want to be hypnotized. They've never been hypnotized before, and therefore they don't know how to know whether it's working or not. So you get this thing that we call social compliance, where they think what it looks like if they've watched a show before is everyone's just doing what they're told. So they just go along with it and they do what they're told. So they're basically using their imagination, but they're not actually hypnotized. And, again, those people will blend in at first, but they will end up showing in other ways that they're not actually hypnotized, and they don't cause problems. They're not, looking to get attention. They really want to be hypnotized. It's just not working for them. So eventually we get them weeded out and they go back and, they can try it again some other time. But, yeah, I really don't have problems with fakers. Yeah.
No, and when you were starting off, talking about the education, that is one of the reasons why we're doing this is that we want people who are looking for someone like you to really understand you and understand why you do it and why they should bring you on board. And when you talk also about having a lot of experience, and that experience has, brought a lot of clarity that's, just kind of a no-brainer to you that wouldn't necessarily make sense to someone else. One of the things that I picked up when I was doing some homework on what you've been up to for the last little while online, I came across your 2013 your web series.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, it was produced by you, and I have a background in video. So I right away gravitated towards the quality of that. So how did that come apart? Come to be? It was really well done. And
thank you.
I've got some other questions about it, but how did that come to fruition?
Oh, geez, man, that was such a great experience for me, and it's one of those things where if I could just keep doing it, I would keep doing it forever. But the economics of that are sort of prohibitive. It's really simple. I know that we still live in an age where the vast majority of the public are not educated about hypnotism and what it really is and what it can really do. I saw an amazing opportunity to sort of help with that and actually lift up my profession a little bit by doing that. I also saw it as a good way to show my own passion for what I do and maybe draw a little more attention to myself and what I like to do as a profession. And so what I had started to do was look into, I was like, man, if there's a reality show for a pawn shop and there's a reality show for guys who make duck calls, like why not for a hypnotist? There's so much genuine curiosity about what I do. Everywhere I go, people are curious. And so I thought, this is crazy that there isn't a reality show for a hypnotist. And so I started talking and trying to, reach out through some channels that I had, and people were like, yeah, that's a nice idea. They were all polite, and finally I was like, you know what? This is stupid. Like, we live in this age where I don't have to ask someone's permission to do what I know is a great idea. Like, I just need to do it myself. And so I had a friend who had gone to the University of New Hampshire, where that's my alma mater, and I had a connection there, and I called him up, and he had a video production company, and I said, hey, here's what I want to do, and I want you to, be the guy that does it for me. And he was like, this is awesome. He's like, yes. And so we worked it out, and he knew that I'm a one-person company and I didn't have a big production budget. And so he goes, well, here's what we can do. We can do this bare bones thing where basically, as the guy who owned the company, he said, I'll do it. I'm not going to send other guys. I think it'd be fun to come along with you and do this, and I'll do it with you, and we'll make it work. And so literally one guy came along with me on the tour, and we filmed everything in probably 7 or 8 days. And then he took all that footage back, and we worked it into those episodes. And the only thing that didn't work out about it was when I sat down for my first production meeting with them, I said, listen, I got one rule, and only one rule. And they were like, all right, let us have it. And I said, it's got to be real. And I said, I will not do the disservice to myself as a professional and to my peers in the industry of creating some reality show that's all about fake scenes that create drama. I said, it's got to have to be like what's really cool about my job. And if my job isn't cool enough, then so be it, and they were like, no, we'll do whatever we can. And so, that was the downside, is if you watch those episodes, you see it, I'm sure, as someone who gets production, like, there wasn't any manufactured drama in that web series. And so it didn't pull the viewership that we hoped, because there's a pretty big size of the public that's what they want. They want train wrecks and chaos and, and I just wasn't, I just wasn't willing to do it.
Actually, I've been on sets with, I can't really talk about which ones, but a reality show, and they'd ask people to stop and redo this and fake that. I can appreciate that approach. And I also, one of the other things I can appreciate from episode 1 is, man, kettlebells can kick your ass.
It's crazy. I went for, what did I go for? 3.5 years. I kept going long after we shot that episode, and I really got great. And it was the strongest I ever was in my life. And I didn't do as much maintenance in terms of like stretching and stuff as I should have, and I actually got problems with my hips and stuff, and I finally had to stop, and I miss it so much. I really do. I miss it so much. It was such a great thing for me, and I miss those days, man. I've got a great snatch. You should see it. I love all that stuff. That's one of the running. If you're in the CrossFit kettlebell world, that's a common joke, but yeah, it's that was a really enjoyable thing for me. It was really cool.
Yeah, this has been really cool. And there's one other thing that I had that I wanted to bring up, and it was the self-hypnosis stuff. The first thing that came to my mind is when you were talking about that, and I'm sure so many people, especially people my age, I'm late 30s, there's office space where he gets hypnotized and the guy has a heart attack halfway through. I'm sure that probably makes you cringe because it's so far from your real world. But like the self-hypnosis, that just seems to me like it's very difficult to wrap my head around, because you get these all these cliches and probably all this misinformation that says someone needs to snap you out of it. How do you go about performing self-hypnosis?
It's a great question. And it's the simplicity of it is often what trips people up. So the answer is you perform it the same way that you perform being hypnotized by someone else, which is the official term for that is heterohypnosis, when one person hypnotizes another person. And either way, it's the same thing. Hypnosis occurs at that moment in which an individual suspends their critical thinking, right? So when you really get someone to step into an idea or an experience in which they stop thinking critically, that's when trance takes over. So the simplest example I can give you is the simplest hypnotic induction I know is an induction called the Ellman induction. It's named after a man named Dave Ellman, who's a big force in the development of American hypnotism. And in his method, all you do is you sit comfortably and you think of what it would be like to relax your eyes and the muscles that control your eyes to the point where, because they're so relaxed, you can't open them. That's all that it is, right? And so what's going to happen is when you do that, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to really step into that and you're going to imagine it so well that it actually works. And at that moment, you'll be in hypnosis. Or you're going to refuse to step into it. You're going to continue to think critically about it and think, that's illogical. I can't, of course I can open my eyes anytime I want to. I can't get my eyes stuck. And as long as you keep in that frame of mind, you won't go into hypnosis. But that's the difference. The moment that you really step fully into the imagination of what would it feel like to be that way, then you go into trance and your brainwaves shift and everything changes. And then you can do the rest of the deepening and the suggestion giving and all of that from there. So that induction is a great example. I could walk you through that. I could talk you through it. Or once you've read it and practice it, you could simply sit and talk yourself through it. You just think it through in your head. And that's the difference between heterohypnosis or self-hypnosis, is basically just who's facilitating the process. Is someone else facilitating for you, or are you doing it for yourself? That's it.
Wow, that's really interesting. This has been really, really cool. I love doing this kind of stuff because I'm a curious person by nature. And by being able to talk to somebody who has a very different skill set than I do, like yourself, it's enlightened me, and I really appreciate your time. Well, the last thing I'd like to ask you is if somebody's interested in getting in touch with you, bringing you to their school or their organization, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the best way would be to call the good folks at Neon Entertainment. So 1-800-993-NEON. That's 6366. And they have a wonderful staff of people there. They'll ask you where you are geographically, because they have different agents that handle different parts of the country. And you tell them what you need and what your event is, and they tell them you really want to, talk to them about having Paul Ramsay and Mind Games come to your event, and they will take great care of you. If you just want to learn more about me, you certainly are welcome to go to paulramsay.com, and Ramsay is spelled Ramsay. And you can see, photos and videos from the show and read up more about the concept if you want. But when you get ready to do it, you just call the good folks at Neon.
Hey, I want to thank everyone for listening in for our conversation here with Paul Ramsay, and continue to check in on the new episodes that we have coming out for Neon Entertainment. And once again, Paul, thanks a ton. This has been really cool.
Mike, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Neon